Hi, I've been really eager to tell you about this kind of story, but it's a series of stories. Do you ever get to be at the front of the line? Do you have a name that starts with A or B, so then you would be named first? I was always kind of in the middle, but one of the things that was true for me when I was in elementary school is I was often a leader. In the Bible, we have many lessons about leaders. I've told you some of them. One was Moses, and then his brother Aaron became a leader. Noah was kind of a leader of pairs of animals. Adam and Eve were partners in leadership in the Garden of Eden, but they made some of the same mistakes that I did. The thing about being a leader that I really liked is it got me some attention. That was really fun for me. I felt important. I felt like I was special, and I forgot the lesson that we learned from Jesus about what kind of leader that you and I are supposed to be. The leader that Jesus describes is someone who is humble. Do you know what humble is? It's kind of a big word in the sense that we don't really understand it very well, but humble can mean, here's a simple way, a humble person is somebody who might be willing to let somebody else go first, or to realize that while they're important, so is everybody else. So that's kind of a way to understand humble. One of the things, though, that we learned from Jesus that I didn't understand when I was your age is that being a leader meant being a servant. It meant helping other people. It meant being someone who was respectful of others' needs, or if somebody's feelings were hurt, they would pay attention to that. The people in Jesus' day wanted him to be a different kind of leader, though. They actually wanted him to be the kind of leader that I was in elementary and then in high school. They wanted Jesus to think he was the most important and the most valuable and the most worthwhile, and that everything that he said, everybody had to obey him just like that. But Jesus kept saying, no, that's not the kind of leader he wanted to be. One night, Jesus had dinner with his friends, his disciples. And all those people in those days, either I think they went barefoot or they wore sandals. But do you ever wear sandals in the summer and at the end of the day your feet are kind of dirty? Well, their habit was, before they would eat dinner, a servant would come in and wash everybody's feet at the dinner table, at the dinner party. Well, Jesus had gathered his friends for like a dinner party, and he then got a towel that he put over his arms, and he went first to one, and he got on his knees, which was kind of embarrassing for them because they looked at Jesus as though he was a leader, but he understood the importance of being humble, putting somebody else first. And Jesus knew how lovely it would be at the end of a day when your feet are all dusty and dirty after walking in the dust, that it would feel really good to have your feet all nice and clean, and maybe your hands too, but he was willing to wash their feet. And there were 12 of them there that night. And he washed the feet of all of them. And like I said, they were embarrassed. And I'm guessing that a couple of them might have even been maybe a little bit of ashamed of Jesus, that he didn't really understand what it meant to be the leader. During the course of that dinner, he explained it again and again and more, trying to help them understand that a leader in God's eyes was somebody who put other people first and thought of their needs, and was careful about hurt feelings, or maybe asked people what they needed rather than deciding for them. And he said that if those 12 dinner party guests, if those friends, the disciples, wanted to follow him, they would need to learn to be a leader like he was. Well, at the end of that evening, he went to a garden called Gethsemane, and the next day he died. And then, as you know, probably 3 days later, he rose from the dead, and then eventually he went back into heaven, and then those disciples were stuck, trying to learn how to be a leader like Jesus. And ever since then, we get stuck sometimes, and sometimes we figured out how we would want to be a leader, to be humble, to think about other people's feelings, and if other people need things, to try to help them get those needs met. And I have to tell you that over the course of my life, especially when I was a pastor, some people wanted me to be the kind of leader that wasn't humble, that made all the decisions. People sometimes really like leaders like that, because then they don't have to think for themselves, or they don't have to worry about the leader setting an example that is thinking of other people. So you might ask your parents or grandparents, somebody at the dinner table tonight, what it's like for them to be a leader in your family, or maybe a leader at work, and then you can ask them what it's like to be a follower. Now, I kind of think there's two kinds of followers, and I've been both. I've been the kind of a follower who had a leader who wasn't very caring, wasn't very interested in what was necessary for me, or how my feelings might have gotten hurt, or if I didn't feel good, and those kinds of leaders, that they were harder to follow. But the leaders that I've known, I think about Pastor George or Mrs. Rose. She was my 4th grade teacher. Mrs. Knack, who was my Brownie troop leader. Those people who were especially kind, I loved following them. And as I remembered when I became a pastor, what it was like to follow somebody who was a kind leader, I decided that was the kind of leader I wanted to be. Kind and attentive and caring and careful. And I'll be honest with you, sometimes I'm like that, but not always. And then I remember that our biggest leader is God, who forgives us when we aren't very good at taking care of our partners and our friends and our family. But I would encourage you this week to think about the ways in which you're asked to be a leader. Maybe the front of the line, or if you're in school and you're learning to read, the one who gets to read first in the classroom, or the one who gets to go first in line for a snack or a birthday present or whatever it is. That you would be a kind leader. That you would be willing to be humble. Those things are beautiful and lovely. And you know what? When we're that kind of leader, it makes God very happy. Will you pray with me? Dear God, thank you for sending Jesus to teach all of us how to be leaders. Help us to be willing to pay attention to others if they're hurting or maybe slow or tired, and that we would be caring for them. And to remember that all of that makes us really good leaders. Help us to do that, God. Amen.